Good morning, bonsoir, bonjour to everyone. Welcome to In Conversation with Mark Greenside. I'm Judy MacMahon from My French Life. For the last 16 years, I've been helping Francophiles from all around the world understand France deeper and France, ideally, France beyond the cliche, through our magazine and our books and our events and things like this that we're doing today. So wonderful to see you all. We've got people across from 6 countries and across 7 time zones. Others are still to come in. We'll let them flow in as we go. Thanks for being here. We're going to have a fun event. I can tell already. So to guide us through this conversation, I'm delighted to hand over to Keith Van Sickle. Keith's a popular author and spends half his time in California, the other half in Provence, in Saint-Remy. So he and his wife, Val, who's here with us as well, have a wonderful life, and he is particularly experienced and appropriate for our conversation with Mark today. So I have, I want to say, Keith is also a regular contributor to My French Life magazine and has been so since 2017, Keith, almost 100 articles. So I'm thrilled that Keith has invited Mark to this conversation today, and living in France, he's particularly qualified for that. I'll now hand over to Keith to introduce Mark. Thanks, Keith.
Thanks, Judy, and welcome everyone. Very happy to see all of you here. And let me tell you about Mark Greenside, who we're going to have a little conversation with today. So Mark, in his earlier life, did a lot of things. He was a professor. He was a union representative. He was a very active social activist. In fact, so active that he spent part of his honeymoon in jail. But that is another story. We're not going to have him talk about that now. We're going to talk about his life in France and his life as an author, because 30-some years ago, Mark took a trip to France with his girlfriend, rented a house in a small town in Brittany, came back without the girlfriend, but with a house, which he purchased, first house he ever bought. And since that time, he has lived part of the year, every year, in Brittany. And I especially like talking to Mark because I live part of my life in France also. And Mark and I have actually met several times and had fun talking about our various experiences. And Mark has written 3 books. The third one was recently published. And I like them, first of all, because they are hilarious. And when I say hilarious, I remember one time I was reading one of his books in bed before going to bed, and I read a passage. It was so funny. I didn't want to laugh out loud, but I was laughing so hard I was shaking the bed. And finally, my wife turned to me and said, "Would you cut it out? Go read something else or read a magazine or something, because really they're hilarious." But the books are also, and this is what I really like, they're also thoughtful and insightful and wise. And so they're a real mix of lovely thoughts about France and how that has affected Mark, as well as being sometimes just hilarious. So with that, let's start talking to Mark. And Mark, you have written 3 books. The last one just came out. So maybe you could tell us, this last book, why did you write it, and how is it different from the other 2 books you've written?
Thanks, Keith, and thank you, Judy. Over the years, I've read dozens, maybe hundreds of books about France, living in France, mostly foreigners living in France, and looking for sort of the similar kinds of experiences that I've had, and pretty much the books all follow the same kind of a pattern. These are American authors primarily, not other cultures coming to France, and primarily they're all books about this is the first day of the rest of my life. I get here and my life is beginning again. Everything is new. I have new friends. I have a new house. I have something else that I love. it's a beginning. Almost all of these books are about beginnings and arriving, and that's great. That's what my first book is about. Also, I'll Never Be French. It's about arriving and falling in love, and it in fact ends with, and it's a new beginning. But it's 35 years later, and when I first bought the house, I was 47. When I started writing this book, I was 77. And you have a different sense of time. At one point in the book, I say, at 47, I looked at older people and I never saw myself. At 77, I look at younger people and I think you've got no idea. So it's a much different perspective than the other books. This book, the other books, the first book is about beginnings and arriving. This book has a sense of an ending as part of the tone of it. And I wanted to write about that because nobody in the other books that I've read seems to get older, and certainly nobody gets old. Everybody is the age they are when they get there, and they stay that age. But I've got this 30 years of experience, and things change over 30 years, and I wanted to write about that. The other thing I wanted to write about is what F. Scott Fitzgerald calls that 3 a.m. Real dark night of the soul, because nobody else seems to have that in France either. Everybody has problems. You have problems with language, you have problems with your washing machine, you have problems with neighbors. And for the most part, they get resolved. But nobody wakes up in the middle of the night with the pit of the stomach gloom. I do sometimes, at that regular existential malaise. And I wanted to write about that too, because it doesn't only happen in California. It doesn't only happen when I read the newspaper. It sometimes happens in the middle of the night in France. And I wanted to write about that, and also write about my remedies for when it happens. So those are the different things in this book from the other books.
Mhm.
You must have
And
had some of that.
well, it's interesting that I read your book as a valedictory, looking back on your time, and I think I was struck by it especially. It's interesting. Judy asked me recently to invite another My French Life author to answer some questions and I chose Susan Grosso, who's lived in France for 30 years, and it's very interesting to me not to have that newbie experience, which is great. We've all had it, but really to understand how France has changed people or what it's like over time, because
Hmm.
that's not an experience everybody has.
Right.
And it's not as funny. The humor tends to come from the mistakes you make.
Right.
But looking back, it's interesting to ask the question, how has it changed you? And
Hmm. Hmm.
what's different about you than it was before you came here? Yeah.
Yeah, no, let me read you a little something for how some of the differences. Very simple for different how I live in the U.S. and how I live in France. This is a chapter from the new book. It's called Knock Knock. It begins. This is the beginning of the chapter. In the U.S., hardly anyone knocks on our door unannounced, and I prefer it that way. In Plobian, everyone does, and I prefer it that way too. Much, much more social in France than I am in the States. I hardly know my neighbors here in California. I've spoken to them rarely, besides hello, goodbye, that sort of stuff. In France, my neighbors are my best friends. I see them regularly. I travel with them. We've traveled through France together. We've traveled through the United States together. We've traveled through Canada together. Um, so it's a much more different and social relationship. The other difference is, of course, in the United States, I feel somewhat successful, and I feel somewhat independent. And of course, in France, all I feel is shortcomings. I can't do this. I didn't do that. I wish I had done this. And things work out. They always work out, but not without going through all those feelings, and never, never independently. I'm always relying on somebody else for help, for advice, for direction. It's a much more dependent life, and I'm a much more dependent person in France than I am here. Here, I tend to be someone who leads. In France, I am absolutely a follower, and I want to follow right. I want, I want to be that elephant holding that tail in front of me. I don't want to get out of line. Um, I'm also, I'm always impatient, but in France, I'm less impatient. So it just, I don't know, it's just much more comfortable.
Yeah, so it raises a question. Just think about that. You've done this for 35 years.
Uh-huh.
So do you bring parts of your French life back to California or vice versa? Are they two separate or have they melded in some way and how so? Have you become a little
Um,
less impatient in California? Are you a
they,
little
they,
less?
they, yeah, they meld a little, but it's like my French. you know, which you do know is awful. But I go to France every summer for 3 months, and I pick up my French almost where I left it off. I have a
Mhm.
couple of weeks to catch up and move it forward one step or two steps. Then I go away 9 weeks, 9 months, and it falls back. And so each year is like that. And it's the same thing with bringing traits back and forth. When I first come back, I'm a little bit more French. After 6 months back here, I'm back to New York, Californian. It sort of lasts, but not as much as I would like. Either way, I mean, I often find myself much more New Yorkish than I'd like to be in when I'm in France. Um,
Mhm. But do you calm
so
down over time? After a few weeks, do you calm down a little bit in France?
I do calm down. I calm down a lot. One of the reasons is I have no language to argue. So I can't fully express myself verbally. But there are other differences. Another difference is, in the US, I expect, because this is where I'm from, I expect much more. And the result is I appreciate less and I'm less grateful. Whereas in French, I expect much less, and I'm much more appreciative and grateful. At the end of the book, I have a list of 21 things that I've learned over the years, and I'm going to read you one of them about things that are important. In the US, I worry about the big things: climate change, civil and not so civil wars, affordable housing, crumbling infrastructure, racism, poverty, disease, and traffic. In France, the big things are beyond me, and it's the little things that torment, like guessing what word to turn the dial to on my new clothes dryer to rapidly dry not so dirty cottons, and what to serve Bruno and Francoise for dinner. It's the difference between looking through a telescope the correct way and the wrong way. In the US, I look the right way, and blemishes seem larger, closer, and more immediate, and I get angry and upset. In France, I look the wrong way, and everything seems smaller, farther away, and precious, and I feel nostalgic and protective. So it's those kind of differences. Another one is c'est la vie. In France, it's my life is c'est la vie. In California, it's shit happens. So I'm going to read you another one from the list. C'est la vie. That's life. French people are not generally an optimistic, positive people. They await the unwelcome, and when it comes, c'est la vie is the response. In the US, the response is shit happens. In the US, I fight hubris. How else could I have written 5 books? In France, it's abasement. How many times can I fail? Let me count the ways. If I had all these failures in the US, I'd take it personally and be depressed and angry. Shit happens. But I've been in Brittany and France long enough to know it's not personal, just life. C'est la vie.
Well, you
So,
just mentioned failure. And one of the things that when you move to a new country, you don't speak the language, you don't know the customs, you make a lot of mistakes
A
and
lot.
a lot. And experience setbacks and you have to manage through those or you're not going to have very much fun in that country. So how have you dealt with that? Uh, I think the
Um,
phrase used was learning to live with failure. How do you learn to live with failure?
well,
I mean,
there's no choice. It's like going to an immersion school. I mean, you either learn it or you don't talk to anybody.
Mhm.
And so when I'm in France, it's I either figure out what to do about something or it doesn't happen. And here I might get in the States, I might get frustrated and I'll start to call somebody else. There's nobody to call but a friend to say, what do I do? Who do I call? And you just work your way through a whole long process of connections. I mean, just think about here when you make a telephone call and you get put on one of the automatic, for an operator dial one, for
Right.
service dial two. Well, imagine doing that in France with on the telephone with French numbers, and try and figure out what is the sequence of these numbers I need to call. See, you
Mhm.
wind up going 25 times through a sequence of numbers until you get it correct to make the call to not understand the person who's on the other end anyhow. But you have to do it because I've got to get whatever it is I'm looking for finished or accomplished or whatever I'm trying to do. There's no escape. Here, ultimately, I can walk away from most things or find somebody else to do most things. There, I can't. So
Mhm.
it's like total immersion, and it
Mhm.
works. It works. The big thing is not so much failure. The big thing is being a fool.
Mhm.
Uh, I'm okay with failure and shortcomings. It's hard to be a fool, but it's like an everyday activity.
Yeah. I remember, so before Val and I started living in France part-time, we were expats in Switzerland. We moved
Mhm.
there, spent 5 years in the 90s. And so that was full time. That was
Yeah,
where, we had to get cars, we had to get insurance, we had to get a house, we had to, all those things in a country where we didn't speak the language or know the customs. And I remember after we'd been there a few months, Val went to the store to buy some shoes and wasn't able to do it. And she came home and she said, I used to be a competent person.
right,
Just
exactly.
frustrating. But we learned, and in Switzerland and especially in France, because in Switzerland we were able to live largely in English because we worked for American companies. In France, we don't. And so we've had to learn the language. But you just you have to decide whether you're going to be out there and be humiliated regularly or you're just going
Right,
to be a hermit.
right.
And if you're going to live there, you got to choose to be out there and make mistakes and look like an idiot often. And so our approach is kind of, well, if you're going to have a humiliating experience, you can have one of two reactions. One is you can um, just feel bad and withdraw,
Right,
or or you can turn it into a funny story. And
exactly.
that's a coping mechanism. And
That's right.
it's the craziest thing. After a while, you have a lot of funny stories,
Yeah, you do.
and then
Yeah,
you
you
write a
do.
book.
Right. There it is. There it is.
But you
Now, I
have to have the
found that
right
I've
attitude.
lowered the bar so much that it makes it easier for me to get entree because the bar is so low on the expectations from me that it makes it easier for everybody else because they don't have to worry about being foolish. I've already gotten there.
Mhm. So, so, uh, so language. I remember, I think it's in your last book. One of your friends says that, Mark, you speak a French that nobody in the world would recognize as French.
Right.
And and this is after 35 years, and yet you've made wonderful friends that you somehow communicate with. And I think
Right.
it's beautiful and brilliant. And how'd you do that? Because I'm not sure I could.
Um, well, several of the people are bilingual, which is very helpful. But one of the people I'm closest with, Madam P, is uh, total French speaker, doesn't speak any English at all. And she's a person I spend a great deal of time with. And over the years, lots and lots of time. And the conversation is always in French. And, she speaks slowly, and she uses a lot of hand motions, and makes sure that I understand. And, I can do a 5 hour meal in French, but I can't join a French conversation. Somebody would have to either cue me as to what's going on, and then I could join for whatever I have to say about it, or the conversation would have to slow down a little bit. A normal French conversation is way, way, way too fast for me. But people do it. Friends do it. And shopkeepers do it because they want to make a sale. So I know lots of shopping words. I know lots of house words because I have to repair the house and I have to know what I'm asking for, what tool or what part or what product. So I learned those words. And of course, it's France. You learn food words. And you sort of slowly accumulate a vocabulary. But vocabulary is one thing. I have a fairly good vocabulary, but I have zero pronunciation and minus zero conjugation. Everything is first person present tense with God knows what gender. I've introduced myself numerous times as an American woman. So,
Well, I have to say, for anybody who reads your books, the parts where you mangle French are some of the funniest because you have a real talent for mangling French, and they're just
Oh,
hilarious.
I do. I do. Even the French people like it, actually. Well, when the first book came out, I went to a party at my neighbor's house, Bruno's house, and the book had been translated into French, and people were sitting there reading the book, laughing hysterically at the French version. Especially when I asked for milk but didn't know the word for milk, and asked for the juice of a cow, the jus de vache, or when I wanted a bay leaf and I didn't know how to say bay leaf, and everybody's roaming around the market talking about a bay leaf, and very funny. Even French people find these things very funny.
So I'm gonna ask you a question from one of our listeners. This came in earlier.
Uh,
You mentioned Madame P, and the question was, who is she, and why don't you use your real name? Why don't you identify her? So it's
that's a
sort of
good question. That's really a writing question. That's a question of, what do you leave in and what do you take out? Which is, constant question for writers, whatever it is that you're writing. Um, so who is she? Madam P is as Keith mentioned in the beginning. I first went to Brittany with a girlfriend. We rented a house for a summer. Madam P was the keeper of the keys of the house we rented. So she was our constant contact, um, with French life and where things are, how things work, everything. And then when my girlfriend and I broke up that summer in France, Madame P became sort of my protector. She took pity on me, as thankfully most French people do, and she basically adopted me and took care of me like French Protective Services. So she was my first contact and first friend in France. Um, I don't use her name because, well, for two reasons. One, none of the people I write about have signed up to be written about. Um, I mean, I'm in their country, in their community, in their village. They've included me in their life. I feel very much a part of really almost five families that I feel very much a part of the family. Nobody has signed up to be written about. So that's very much in my mind. The other thing is that, as you and I were talking the other day, we very cognizant of Peter Mail's problems. When Peter Mail wrote A Year in Provence, he used real names, and people were not happy.
and he
They
made
weren't
fun of
happy having, sorry,
and he made fun of people.
he
That's the
made
other.
fun of people. They weren't happy being made fun of. They weren't happy having their names used. And he ultimately had to move.
Mhm.
because he was so unpopular. I didn't want to move. I liked my house. I liked my
Yeah.
neighborhood. I liked everything about it. So I was cognizant of Peter Mayle. I was cognizant that people didn't sign up to be written about. So I had to find a way around this, and the way was actually pretty simple. When I first wrote the book, each book, I gave a copy of the book to all of the French people who could read English. And I asked them to read it for me for all kinds of things, for accuracy, for grammar, French grammar, because I mean I could sound stupid, but the French people had to sound reasonable. So
Mhm.
to read it for that, but also to read it for offense. You know, have I unintentionally offended somebody? If I intentionally, that was okay. But if I unintentionally, I didn't want to. So I gave it to all the people I knew who could read English. Bruno, Gilles, Tatiana, Jean, Sharon, they read it, they commented on it, and they said I could use their names. So
Oh,
in the book, I used their real names. Other people who don't read English couldn't read it. And and I know about French privacy and their um, concern and interest in maintaining their privacy. So I changed the names. I
mhm.
changed almost all the French people's names, actually all the French people's names. And then I heard from one of them, and I know you've had the same story, that she didn't like the French name I gave her. She wanted to go back to her original name. So in the second
Right.
and third book, she has the original name because she didn't like my phony French name.
Well, yeah, it's funny. I did the same thing. I changed everybody's name. I want to, respect their privacy. And what I tried to do was give them age appropriate names. So if I knew
Mhm.
somebody was, 60 years old, born in 1965, I can look up popular names of babies given that year. So I don't want to
Right.
name any Jade or some crazy modern name. And I have one friend who's now passed away, Jeanette. That's a real name. And I have to tell you, every time I would mention my friend Jeanette, all my other friends, French friends would say, wow, that's an old name. That's like really old. So I looked up approximately the year she would have been born, looked up popular names. Jeanette was one of them. I named her Odile, which was same vintage. And when she read the book, she was mad at me because she said, Odile, that's an old person's name. Honestly, Jeanette, I can't tell you the reaction. But again, you want to be respectful of people, not mock
Right,
them. I mean, one
right.
of the things I appreciate in your books is all the humor. The punchline is always you.
Yes, it always is. Yeah, yeah,
Why
yeah.
mock these wonderful people who are being kind to you in this great country that has welcomed you?
Have you had any problems with people who didn't like something you wrote
No,
besides Odile?
and that was just for it. No, there've only been a few passages where I wasn't sure the person would appreciate the way I wrote it and ran it
Mhm,
by them.
mhm.
And I said, "Oh, if you could just tweak it a little bit, it's great."
Right.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
so again, they're my friends. Why would I want to do anything
Yes,
other
of
than
course. Exactly.
love
Exactly.
them?
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I was trying to think. Oh, there was another question here that just came in. It was when you're, what happens to uh, your house in France when you're back in the US?
Um, well, I let friends use it. I used to rent it out, but lots of laws have changed in France, and ma it makes renting a lot more difficult. So I don't rent it anymore, but I do leave it for friends to use, um, and it's used primarily about 5 months a year between April and October. Um, Sometime mid-April, sometime mid-October. Somebody's usually at the house. Um, the rest of the time, it's watched by local people, by neighbors, by friends. I do have somebody that I pay to take care of the house also. Once, years and years ago, the river that runs in front of the house flooded, and yeah, there are so many copies of my keys around the village that a half dozen people showed up at the house and just moved furniture. And
Well,
and took care of it. A couple of years ago, there was a huge storm, Sirion, and it did some damage to the house. People came and made sure that one window broke in the attic. And they came and they sealed the window so no more rain would come in. So yeah, local people have been very, very helpful, and watchful. I've been very lucky.
Mhm. And at this point now, you're the longest
I'm
term
the old
resident,
guy on the block.
right?
This
Yeah.
is
It's
I
weird to be the newbie
I
to now be the senior members of the block.
I am. I am. And I'm at the one far end of the town, the most rural part of the village. And as far as I know, everybody on that end of town has come after I've been there.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm the old guy on the block. And personally, um, I've had the house now for 35 years. It's the single longest address I've ever had in my life. So, it really feels like I belong. I really started to feel that after COVID, after being away 2 years, and then coming back.
Right.
That was really the first time I ever felt like, yeah, I really do belong here. As odd as I am, as different as I am, this feels right. And then of course I'm the longtime person, and I've been there the longest. And also all of my relatives from grandparents on are European. So it's also part of the DNA. My father was born in Hungary. He actually came to the United States from France. From Hungary when he was 1 year old, they moved to Strasbourg. And then at 9, they left from Marseille and went to New York. So French was probably his first official language.
Mhm. So, so how do you live differently in the two countries? How's your life different other than you know how to use a washing machine in the US?
Um, well, it's much more social in France. I see many, many more people than I do here. I have lots of friends here, but everybody's busy. Everybody's got family. Everybody's got their own thing going on, and everybody's traveling. So I see people, but not as concentrated as when I'm in France. When I'm in France for a fixed period of time, and everybody makes sure that the get-togethers happen. I mean, some of them are planned way in advance before I get there. And then there's also the knocking on the door. All kinds of people knock on the door. People passing by. The guy that fixes my furnace, he's a plumber friend. If he's driving by and he sees my car, he'll come in sometimes and just look at the furnace to make sure it's working. Not even knock on the door. Sometimes he'll knock on the door, come in for a cup of coffee. The guy that did my floors, drive by, see the car, come in and invite me for dinner. Um, it's just a very, very social life. There are, as I said before, there are about 5 families that have basically adopted Donna and me, and we go to all the big family functions, birthdays, anniversaries, weddings, Sunday dinners, events for the kids. We get invited to most of those things. It's again, not here, not here, not the same.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting though that you say that because you have a fixed time, you make sure you see people. Val and I actually find that in both countries. We find that because
Uh-huh.
California for a fixed period, we can't just say, "Oh, we'll see the Woodsons sometime." It's like, no, we're going to
Right.
leave in a certain time. We got to make sure we see them. So
That's
it,
right.
I think, causes us to have more social events in both countries because we
Yeah.
move back
See, you're 6 months, 6 months. I'm 3 months, 9 months.
more like 4 months, 8 months. But yeah, but it's still
Okay. Yeah.
there's always this deadline. Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So I see that we've got a few questions popping in. So
Okay.
let's see. There are a couple similar. Why not live in France permanently, or would you ever consider moving there full time? Why or why not? Well, why don't we start there?
Um, no, I like my bifurcated life. The village that I'm in is 500 people. Um, I'm basically a city guy. I mean, I was born in Brooklyn. I live in New York. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. I like theater. I like museums. I like Mexican food. There's no Mexican food in my village.
Mhm.
Um, and I like all those things. And I would, yeah, I would miss them. And of course, I'd miss friends and family from here. Um, I like the two cultures, and I like going back and forth from the two cultures, and I like going back and forth from rural to urban. I mean,
Mhm.
this is a very small village in a rural area. In fact, the village is in a national park, um, and I like the change. I like the bifurcation. And now, as you know, they've changed all the rules for citizenship and residency anyhow. And they've added a language requirement, although I guess because I'm over 65, I'd be exempt. But even so, it's a lot harder to get residency and citizenship than it was 3 years ago. So,
Yeah.
but I do like the bifurcation.
Yeah, so do I. I live in California, Silicon Valley. So this is all
Mhm.
about, inventing the future. It's living in the future. It's a super
Mhm.
international area, people from all over the world. It's very dynamic and it's great. It's exciting. And France is for us also a rural town, much slower pace of life, beautiful in its own way. And you really can't put those two together. You can't have
No,
go to the future and this beautiful pleasure in small things. So we split it up. We enjoy
right,
each.
right.
So and the
Us
change.
too.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So let's see. Let me see some other questions. Are there aspects of your Americanness that you feel help you in France?
I'm pushy. I mean, sometimes you have um, to get pushy is not the right word. I'm persistent. I
Mhm.
don't walk away from something. So um, I will just follow it through and see where it goes and uh, um, try to get to an end that's satisfactory. And almost always I do. A friend of mine once said to me, this is France. Nothing works the way you want it to or expect it to, and everything turns out okay. And
Mhm.
that's really been my experience. But you have to stick with it. You have
Mhm.
to keep following through and not necessarily push, but you have to be there. You have to be present, um, and and continue moving in the direction you want to move.
Yeah, I think the part of my Americanness that helps is it's not so much Americanness, it's foreignness. And by that I mean because we've lived there a long time, because we speak the language, we understand a lot of how things are supposed to be done. We understand what the rules are, and every society has their rules.
Right.
But because we're not French, we get some slack.
A lot
We're
of slack.
free electrons. We can
Mhm.
understand and we can participate when we want, but if we want to go around the rules, it's like, well, they're Americans, it's okay. So we take
Exactly.
advantage of our foreignness where it's,
Hmm.
we're not so foreign as to cause problems. We're foreign enough to know where we can skirt the rules more than a French person
Yes.
would be allowed to. Because a French
Right.
person is like, you know how to do this. You can't do it that way. We can.
Right. That's
So
right. That's right.
yeah. So let's see. Are there other Americans in your town, in your village?
No, I'm the only American, and that makes me a curiosity, which is actually something else that helps me get around in town. I'm a curiosity for being an American, for being a writer. For most
Mhm.
of the time, I was there alone, and because well, at the beginning there was no Donna, and then when Donna did start to come, I would go for 2 or 3 months. She would go for 4 weeks. So
Okay.
again, most of my time was alone, and I was an oddity. I'm a middle-aged guy living alone. The only middle-aged people who live alone are either widowers or crazy, and I wasn't either. So they couldn't quite figure out, what to do with me. And then I would do things that men of my generation in small villages didn't do. Like couples would walk down the street and they would see me hanging up laundry,
Mhm.
and
Really.
you could just see the women, nodding to the men. You see, you see, you see, and the
Mhm.
men going, not a chance. I ain't doing it. So yeah, I was an oddity and a curiosity, and that helped meet people.
Does help, right? People want to, why are you here? And what do you think about
Right,
our country? Why did you pick this place? And what's it like?
exactly.
No, it
Right.
helps. You're not threatening. You're just a curiosity and they want to know
No,
about you.
I didn't have the language to be threatening.
Right, right. What is the phrase you use? It's hilarious in your book. I think you say, in a country where language is foreplay, I can't
I
play.
can't play. Yeah, right.
It's a nice way to put
Right.
it. Okay, here's one. So if you suddenly woke up one morning and felt completely French, what part of yourself would you miss the most?
I'm sorry if I'm not completely French.
Well, you woke up one morning and you felt completely French. Suddenly you're
Ah,
French. What would you
uh-huh.
miss about your where you are today?
Um, I guess independence. I mean, I do, like Val, I do feel competent here. I do feel relatively successful. I do feel like I can handle most things that come up, and I rarely feel that way in France.
Mhm. Hmm. And after decades in France, what's the one habit or reflex that you now have that would surprise the American you used to be?
Ah, I wait in lines and don't grumble quite as much. I know everything is going to take much longer than I want it to take. There's no such thing as like a 7-Eleven store in France. So you park your car, jump into the store, grab whatever you're going to buy, and leave. Everything is a conversation, a hello, goodbye, maybe something in between. How's the
Mhm.
weather? And everything is so much slower. And I'm from New York. It's hard for me to deal with slow. I don't want somebody reaching in their pocket to pay the bill. Why don't you have it in hand already? Why don't you know? Or when it's your turn to order, why don't you know what you want to order? So I have that kind of impatience, much less in France.
Mhm. I remember we used to go to a butcher, which is now closed. There's an old traditional butcher in town, old couple that took care of it. And it was, when you went in, you took all the time you wanted. There was the
Yes,
conversation. How's the family? How are your bunions? How are you going to prepare this? How many people are coming? Talk about the recipe, talk about the sauce, talk about,
exactly.
I remember we walked in one time, there were two people there in line. And Val looked at me and she said, okay, this will take about 45 minutes. And it took 45 minutes. And
That's
how can
right.
it? You,
I know.
but it's
That's
nice.
right.
Somebody calls and they got to talk to the butcher because they're ordering for Sunday and they got to, when are you going to pick it up? At 11? No,
That's
12,
right.
11 or 12. They have the salt conversation. How much salt you're putting? Oh, that's too much. Oh, my husband always puts too much salt. Oh,
Right.
husband always put
Right.
too much. It just
Yeah.
goes on
Yeah. I've had those conversations about water.
about what.
Water, sparkling, flat, with sodium, without sodium, mineral, not mineral. I mean, you go to the supermarket and you look at the shelves for water, and it's like our potato chip shelf. There are so many different varieties with slightly different flavors and tastes. And yeah, people go on and talk about water for a long time. It's
Well,
just a conversation.
I find that discussions at meals, which can be 4 or 5 hours, are often mostly about food. This
Yeah,
meal, other meals
yeah,
you've had, this recipe, other meals you're gonna have.
right,
You know, I
right.
had a friend over
Yes,
one time talk about fish
exactly.
for 4 hours, and it was fascinating. He was really into
Yeah,
fish, learned all about
yeah,
fish,
right, right.
but it's great. Oh, wait a minute. Here are a couple more. Is the French attitude toward the U.S. changing much in the last 10 years and how?
Well, certainly with Trump, it's changed tremendously. Um, yeah, and French people are sophisticated enough to make a distinction between individuals and countries. And And generally, Americans as individuals are enjoyable. We're
Mhm.
friendly, we're outgoing, we're generous, um, we're funny. We don't mind making fun of ourselves, which French people usually don't like to do. So, we can be entertaining as well as informing and interesting. And so, as individuals, I think in some ways, probably the view of Americans has improved over the years. I know the first time I went to France, or I was in Paris in the 1960s, and the war was on in Vietnam. De Gaulle was president, and it was rough to be an American at that point. I don't feel that at all anywhere. And the only encounters I've had about being an American are with older people, and they've been extremely positive all about World War II.
Yes, right.
Um,
I've got that as well. Yeah.
thank you for this, and and that for helping, and that. But when you talk about the country and the politics, they weren't too keen with Bush,
Mhm.
and with the invasion of Iraq. They're generally critical of American culture, thinking it's
Mhm.
a little shallow, and just leave it at shallow. And they don't like American politics generally. I mean, they did like Obama a lot,
They don't like
but
their own politics right now either. So we're kind of even on that score.
that's right. That's right. But with Trump, I mean, everything has really turned. I mean, people ask all the time, how can you be doing this? How can your country do this? It constant commiseration and some anger. And you see it more and more. So yeah, people have changed their attitudes towards the country, but not towards the people.
I've never felt it individually. You know,
Yeah.
the funniest thing that ever happened was once we met some folks. We had dinner through friends, and they had never met Americans. They didn't speak English. They had never met Americans. And after a few minutes, they said, "We have to admit, we're surprised to meet you because you're not fat and you don't own guns." And I'm really? And
Uh,
we were kind of surprised you're not wearing berets and carrying baguettes. And then we all
yeah.
laughed. We're gone.
I mean, sometimes it works to your advantage because, people never know what to expect from Americans.
Right.
So, that surprise could work. But the fat is interesting because I had a friend staying at the house years ago, and I was talking to my neighbor, and my friend came downstairs from the bedroom, and he was a big guy, and he was fat, and he was putting his t-shirt on. So he was t-shirtless, putting his t-shirt on, and my friend, the neighbor who sees him in the doorway says, "Ah, un American typique,"
Sweet.
a typical
Right.
American.
That's the image. Yeah.
Yeah, that is the image. Yeah.
Okay, we got a couple more here. So, Mark, if France could give you a report card, what do you think you'd be praised for? And what would you get he could do better?
Well, I could definitely do better with language. I mean, everybody would say that. Um, but I would also be praised for language because, I actually try. And I can convey what I want to convey. It's just not in a way any French person would convey it. I mean, basically, what I do is I take English and I translate it directly into French.
Mhm.
Um, so it's just a bizarre construction. And that's just the construction. Then it's a bizarre pronunciation. Um, and then there's a bizarre lack of conjugation. But I do it, and I can talk to people. I can ask for directions. I can understand the directions. Um, again, I can do a 5 hour, dinner. I can do all this stuff if people make allowances for me, and they do, and I think they give me credit for that, and I think they also give me credit for just for being there. French people do not like to be uncomfortable in a social situation. That's why all the rules
Mhm.
keep people comfortable.
Mhm.
You know what you're supposed to do, and you do it, and if you do it, everything is okay. I don't know the rules. I often break them. It makes it easier for everybody else. That he doesn't know what he's doing, so it's okay for me to be a little less precise or less careful or even foolish. I mean, we were at again we were at Bruno's house for dinner one night with some of his friends and family members, and all of a sudden one fellow stands up and starts jumping up and down behind his chair, just jumping up and down, like he's dancing, right? And
Yeah.
everybody looks at him. All the French people look at him and say, what are you doing? We've never seen you do this before at all. And it's because Donna and I are being crazy. So
Okay.
because we're being crazy, he can be crazy. And that's what I mean about lowering the bar. He would
Right.
never have done that with French people, only French people.
Right.
But since we're being crazy, he can be crazy. And I see that a lot, that people are willing to do and say things or try things that they ordinarily wouldn't do, except we're so far over the line that they'll never get that far.
Mhm. Kind of a not quite as an exotic example as that, but in French dinner parties, the hostess serves. Puts the food on
Absolutely.
the plate, passes it around. Val isn't really crazy about that. She's like, people can serve themselves. So people serve themselves when they come to our house. And we have a friend, James, who thinks this is the greatest thing because I really don't like vegetables. I pretty much a meat and potato guy. So he loads up and he thinks it's the greatest thing that he doesn't get served. He can just take what he wants.
Right,
Yeah.
but he wouldn't do that at a French house.
He couldn't possibly because he has to be served.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, right. Hmm.
So here's a question. What do you bring in your suitcase from the US when you come to France? What do you make sure you bring?
Um, Mostly writing things. I bring manuscripts I'm working on. I bring pens, pencils. I bring yellow pads because I can't find them in France. Um, Although I've been told, I think you told me they do exist, although I've never seen them.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
okay. So I bring a lot of writing implements. And then really besides that, sometimes gifts and clothes. When I first got there, when I first went to France, I brought everything. I brought whiskey, I brought scotch, I brought my own coffee, so I have my Pete's blend.
Each blend.
Um,
Yep.
but that's all gone by the wayside. I can buy scotch there. I can buy coffee there. I can buy clothes there.
Do you
Um,
keep it there?
Not much. Um,
Or okay.
so we carry it back and forth because the house can get damp, and also, when people were staying at the house, they needed the storage space. So I leave
Mhm.
some things there, but not a lot. And
Mhm.
so it's mostly clothes and writing implements and manuscripts.
Yeah, we
And maybe a laptop.
we
Usually I
actually
leave it there, but sometimes I take it back and forth.
really leave a laptop there.
Yeah, I leave a
Um,
laptop.
yeah, we actually have a storage location there for clothes and stuff. It's
Oh,
about
yeah. Yeah.
3 by 5. Keep our bikes, keep some clothes, makes it easier to go back and
Uh-huh.
forth. People have
Right.
always asked, "You are you ever going to get a place in France?" And now we can say, "We have a little place in France." It doesn't have
That's great.
windows.
That's great.
So then, opposite, what do you bring home from France to the US?
Um, we bring home clothes. We go shopping.
Mhm.
We wait for the summer sales. And
Right.
we go to our favorite stores and bring home clothes. Donna buys shoes every year at Mephisto.
Mhm.
Um, and we bring home France. Brittany is known for its pottery. We bring home some ceramic ware from Anrio, a long, long, long time faïencerie. We don't bring home food products. It usually too difficult to do that. Um, and lots and lots and lots of pictures,
Mhm.
photos. Yeah.
We bring home sunscreen because sunscreen in France
Aha. Yeah, it's
like
better. You're right.
3 times as
You're right.
effective in the US. My
Actually, that reminds me. I bring home shampoo.
shampoo, really?
I do. I bring home shampoo.
Okay.
Uriage or Uriage. I don't know how you pronounce it, but it's great, great shampoo.
Okay. Judy, I'm just checking our time.
I think we're nearly towards the end. Do we
So
have one last question for Mark?
hold on. Is there a question here? I thought I passed one. Uh, Thinking about this a lot recently, do you think the attitude toward Americans could change if the US continues to be the aggressor, for example, in Iran? Could it, I
Uh,
guess, turn against all Americans, not just the government?
no, I don't see that. I think French people genuinely like Americans as a people. And this is a long, long, long history that goes back to the founding fathers. The relationship between French people and Americans and France and the States is long-standing and strong. It's close and it's good. And while they would hate some of the policies, um, some that exist, some that could exist. They wouldn't take it out on local people. And in
Mhm.
fact, what you see now in France is local people joining French and everybody else in protesting. So, you have the Americans and the French people in France, in Paris, the big cities, and all protesting what's going on in the States
Right,
together.
right. It's the national sport.
It is the national sport.
Yeah. But it's funny when I've been thanked by French people for American help in World War II, I always note that France is America's oldest ally. And
Absolutely.
also tell them, and not most people don't know this, even Americans, in the House of Representatives, behind the Speaker's rostrum, are two
Hmm.
large paintings. One is George Washington, the father of our country, and the other is Lafayette.
Right,
And
right.
Lafayette, the painting came first. So it's like, oh,
It
we
came first. I didn't know that. Yeah.
did the
Huh.
painting George Washington. So
Yeah.
just sort of thank you, but thank you too. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
really helped us in our
That's
War of Independence.
that's a great note to finish on, Keith and Mark.
Thank you.
What a fun conversation. Ah,
It was terrific.
Thank you.
thank
Thank
you
you for the
so
opportunity.
much. Yeah, to Keith and Mark, hilarious as usual. First
Thank
time
you.
that I've met you though, so thank you
Yes, it
very
is.
much. If everyone would just take a moment and rank and rate this event just in the chat while I close, that would be really wonderful. It helps us feel helps us learn about these things, and helps people like me be sure that the alarm goes off, which didn't happen this morning. So I almost missed this event.
Well, thank you, Keith, and thank you, Judy.
Our pleasure. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Be sure to subscribe to Mark and to Keith and to their writings, and follow all their hilarious stories and goings carry on. And don't forget to subscribe, if you wish to My French Life.
Yes.
We have both a free and a paid version of subscription, and I'm at the moment, if anyone would care to take out a paid subscription, I'll give you 18 months for the price of 12.
Yay.
And you can have steak knives. And so 50% reduction for the next 48 hours or something, but not too serious. We're here to have fun. I just wanted to say thank you. I love these events. I love the way that we get people from all around the world, different nationalities, different locations, different experiences, different histories. And when we do other book club events where we actually read a book together and discuss it, that brings so many different perspectives that it's so rich. And so, first time that we've done an author conversation. Mark, you've been the guinea pig. You've done well. Thank you.
I'm happy to be the guinea pig once again.
So if they don't praise on report cards in France, we'll give you the praise. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, been my pleasure to spend time with all of you. Merci. I can't even speak. It's Sunday morning too early. So, au revoir. À bientôt to
À
everyone.
bientôt. Merci
Okay.
beaucoup.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.